after a first defeat of the season. But I'm going to try and repair that emotional damage with the return of an old friend and the grumpy face of a regular friend, who I'll introduce first. Good to have you back, mate. Drew, how you doing?
How are you?
You got called Eeyore on Twitter today.
Yeah, that'll be because I don't know, 5 a.m. always comes early, so it's what it
does. I mean, just change your job, mate. Just change your job. And it's. I mean, this guy has been pestering me non-stop to come back on this show. How you doing, mate? Are you good?
Yeah, I'm very well, mate. Thanks for having me back on the show, mate. It's been a long time. I'm really looking forward to talking to you and to Drew as well. Let's get going.
Awesome. Obviously, for those who don't know, this is Memz. Or both the guys' information will be in the description at the end of the video. But thank you ever so much for tuning in today. Thank you for our live chat. We've been sitting there very, very patiently. I can see people saying, hurry up. Good evening to you too, Josh. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. Obviously, we'll get through some of your comments throughout the show. But as we always start off these shows, Drew, I'm going to go back to you, mate. Give me your 1 to 2 minute breakdown of how you saw things over the weekend.
Ironically...
You're muted, mate. Oh, you're back again now.
Nope.
You cut out. It's fine. It's fine, mate. Technical brilliance at its finest.
It seems like yet again it's almost a match of two halves. I thought I seem to be in the minority that I actually think Emery got it correct in the first half. Liverpool are, for me, the best counterattacking side in the Premier League, and if you give them space behind you, they're going to absolutely slaughter you. So it's like we took that space away. We didn't allow Trent Alexander-Arnold or Robertson to put in those diagonal balls they like to do from wide out and cause the backline problems. We cut that out. Liverpool's best chance came from their headed corner. So I feel like that actually did its job. And ironically enough, our best chances for me also came from on the break into space. Pepe taking on his man, beating Robertson like he did. Unfortunately, didn't finish. Oba tried to get involved when he could. When you have players like that at Anfield, if you play open at Anfield, no one plays open at Anfield, not even Pep. Pep sets City up to be a little bit more defensively astute at Anfield because he knows. I think the second half was where the issues arose, where we kind of changed the system a little bit. We wanted to play out of the back. We allowed Liverpool to press as they do. And for me, I think that was a tactical error. I think he kind of inversed what he normally does. A lot of the times Emery might get it wrong in the first half, make those second half adjustments, and then we will improve. He, I think, got it right in the first half, and I think he overthought it and made changes that weren't necessary, and it ended up kind of exacerbating the problem. I do think he should have brought on Lacazette earlier. I think Lacazette could have been that link that we were missing between Pepe and Oba in the midfield because they were often isolated at times. But listen, at the end of the day, Liverpool are ahead of us in their development and their progression. We're not fighting for first or second. We're fighting for third or fourth. So going to Anfield, and we still lost, but it wasn't an actual nightmare for me. We're just not there yet. So when push comes to shove, it's about trying to prepare for it this weekend, getting a result against Spurs. It's disappointing to lose, but then again, no one expects us to get a result on a day. Anything, draw or up would have been a pleasant surprise for us. So I think there are a few positives. There's still some work to do, but I'm not, pitchforks out yet or anything. So.
Memz, mate, with the hype that was sort of around the game leading up to it, we've come off the back of 2 wins. The first time in 9 years we've done that at the start of a Premier League season. Were you slightly disappointed with the way that the game went, or do you actually think that maybe Liverpool just being the better side told by the end of the 90 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot what Drew said, to be honest with you. I think Liverpool at this stage, they're a lot more sort of ahead of us in terms of where we are in the league or where we want to be. Let's remember that Liverpool, it's taken time to reach the levels that they are currently. And I think that we're in this process with Unai Emery, where he's looking maybe at the Liverpool style with the 3 forwards and maybe trying to emulate that. Certainly with Pepe, with Aubameyang and Lacazette, we certainly have enough firepower there when they're all fit and ready to emulate what Liverpool are doing. I do believe as well that once we get our first choice fullbacks playing as well, when we've got Tierney and Bellerin, we can emulate as well what Liverpool do with their fullbacks. It's a process. It's going to take time. I don't believe that Unai Emery's got this magical wand where he's going to be able to just change things overnight. It's going to take time for us to reach the levels that we want to reach. And let's remember where we were when Unai Emery took over. We certainly have progressed. And certainly, in my opinion, it's the performance this weekend was an improvement of previous visits to Anfield. We weren't steamrolled over. We did create chances. We did look a decent team. And I do see progression. I think it will take time. Certainly throughout this process and the course of the season, we're going to see hiccups. But as long as we keep on progressing and keep on moving forward and improving, I don't like Drew said, I don't see the need to panic and to start making, how can I say, insulting remarks about players and the manager. Maitland-Niles, for me, he's not a right back. He's a player that's fitting in, doing a job, and it'd be wrong to criticise him. However, I do believe that when we do play against quality opposition, the likes of Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, he will be exposed on that right-hand side. But I won't call him out and criticise him because he's doing one for the team. He's not a natural right back. I thought Danny Cabasios this weekend, comparing to his performance last week, this weekend he was anonymous. No doubt he's a top player. And if Mesut Ozil had put in a performance this weekend like Danny Cabasios did, I think the Ozil hate brigade would have had an absolute field day. So I don't want to be too negative. I don't want to be negative at all. I think we've had an outstanding summer. The signings that we've made this summer, the starts of the season, the 2 games that we've had, I definitely think that we've got a lot to be positive about this summer. And I really believe that once we get our first choice 11 playing, linking together, we're going to do a lot of damage this season.
100% agree with you, mate. In terms of the lineup that we actually went for, there were some decisions made, Drew, by the coach, which surprised from the start. I think a lot of people were expecting us to go with possibly that front 3 of Alba, Laka and Pepe. We saw us go with a front 2 and then a midfield diamond. Now, we covered that in a lot of detail in today's episode of Tactical Breakdown, which you can find in the description. But Drew, I'm interested to know what your reaction was when you saw the lineup. Were you surprised that you went with those 2? Because for me, Lacazette offers you a lot of industry, especially in those big games away from home. And maybe someone like him and Pepe as a combination may have been better if you wanted to go for the 2. But I think the pace was definitely part of why you went for those 2, more so than bringing in Laka, who's a little bit slower than that of Alba. But how would you evaluate the decision to bring those 2 in instead of going for the front 3?
I can almost kind of see why he did it. Both Oba and Pepe, they sat wider, right? Because if you're sitting deeper, Robertson's going to get forward, Alexander-Arnold's going to get forward, and there are those gaps on the flanks that they can drift wide diagonally and expose. And I think that's maybe what he was going for. So much, they're playing 2 up front, but a mobile 2. It wasn't like he was playing 1 target man and one mobile center forward. So I think that's what he wanted to do. There was that outlet pass out wide we could have had, and again, we created chances with that, didn't we? So. And I think he just wanted to sort of maybe isolate, have both those players get a one-on-one chance when they're on the ball. Oba can burn anyone for pace. Pepe's exquisite on the ball, and as you saw again against what he did with Robertson, and he gave Van Dijk a torrid time, and that's not easily done. So I think those 2 did what they were supposed to do. Again, the only issue is that there was isolation. When we did try to play out of the back more and we did get pressed, there wasn't that link between those 2 and the midfield. As Memz said, Ceballos it was not a good performance. It's going to happen. It's only his 2nd start for the club, so you can't really skin him alive for it. But he had so much tracking and running to do in the midfield when we were getting pressed under pressure. He didn't have that quick outlet, someone who could then turn on the ball and play another pass, right? Ironically enough, Mesut Ozil could have done well, turning the ball, seeing those 2 into space and playing them through. But as you say, Lacazette has such industry, and he does play well with his back to goal for somebody who's not, a very large center forward. He does always press. He does always give that off-ball movement, that off-ball effort that we kind of want to see. And he could have easily just dropped deeper into almost at that 10 area and get that ball up. And I think could have made a little bit of a difference. I do think we'll see that against Spurs. I think we'll come on to that later, obviously. But I think when push comes to shove, this has to be a season where every week we have to have our best players in the 11. And then if that means playing Oba off the left, where he can come in on his right foot, which he actually is quite good at, then we have to see it. There's no point in bringing in these players and not using them week in, week out if we have the opportunity to. So I think that was the only major surprise for me. Again, other than that, I think I thought tactically it was okay. I thought the team selection was okay, bar that. And again, it showed, for me at least, that Unai might be willing to learn that he might have to tweak little things every time you have a different matchup to try and really find the weakness of the other team while also not exposing yourself. So that in itself is progression for him, which is also super important, which is maybe we didn't see last term under him. Maybe he was a little bit more stubborn until his hand was almost kind of forced. This seemed more proactive to me, and I thought that was really good. So we'll see how it goes from there.
Memz, when it came to a lot of the tactics, we talked about having the 2 up front, but I think the fact that we played with that diamond midfield meant that we were obviously very narrow. and playing up against two of the, if not the best, two best fullbacks, not even in England, but maybe even in Europe. Do you think it was arguably a mistake to allow Liverpool to have so many chances to cross the ball into the box? Whilst I thought we dealt with it quite well, and David Luiz and Socrates headed a lot of those lofted balls away, the driven low balls into the box caused a lot of confusion and chaos. And actually, it was the low ball into the box in the second half which led to the penalty, which David Luiz obviously gave away. Do you think maybe we went slightly wrong about that, or do you think it was actually the right way to play against Liverpool?
It's a good question. And obviously, Unai Emery's looked at the strengths of Liverpool and tried to combat that. Now, had Aubameyang had taken his chance when he lobbed the goalkeeper, had Pepe had scored his goal, and had we have be sitting here today with a result, we would all be saying what a tactical masterclass it was. The fact that Unai Emery's changing his tactics, looking at the opponents, is something that maybe we gave Arsene Wenger a little bit of stick about, because Arsene Wenger was very rigid with his tactics. I like the fact that Unai Emery looks at his opponents and tries to change things. Some will say that we're not getting our own identity and maybe we're not getting our own system, but I think this is something which Unai is very brave about. And if it had worked, it would have been brilliant. Because we lost, we can turn around and say that you got the tactics wrong. However, you are right. With the diamond, it did give the fullbacks the opportunity to press forward. There's probably a reason why Unai Emery did it. He probably tried to sniff out Firmino, or maybe he saw some sort of player that he was concerned about, so he tried to pack out the midfield or something. Who knows? I like the fact that Unai mixes it up about and changes the tactics. It makes us a little bit unpredictable, and I think that it's with the players that we've got as well. He can mix it up a bit as well. With regards to the penalty, I do believe it was stupid of David Luiz to pull on the shirt. However, having played the game and watched football for many years, it's something defenders do. We all see defenders with hands on shirts, tugging, etc. I think what David Luiz done, it was just under the nose of the referee, and it was obvious. We saw video clips of Virgil van Dijk pulling on Pepe's shirt as well. That went unnoticed. Excuse me?
Was that a pen for you, the David Luiz? The Virgil van Dijk incident?
It was a pen for me, yeah. I mean, if you're going to set a rule and saying that if you pull on a shirt, it's a penalty, you have to be consistent. I think with Virgil van Dijk, he was maybe just a little bit smarter than what David Luiz was. You can pull shirts, you can do little things as a defender, provided it's not under the nose of the referee. And I think David Luiz was probably just a little bit naive there. However, if you do watch games, you will see defenders putting on shirts countless times throughout the course of the 90 minutes.
Drew, when we're talking about where we then move forward with this, we're going to come up against teams like Man City that are extremely good at pressing as well. We're going to come up against other sides in the league that are going to press us. It hasn't worked in this scenario, and we know that, as Mem said there, he likes the way that Emery likes to mix up his tactics in different games depending on the opposition. Do you then think that he sticks with this and hope that it prevails next time? Because there were opportunities for us to win that game and go ahead in the first half, and arguably go ahead quite well. We had the better chances in the first 30 minutes. But do you think this is now something that he has to change, or is it something that he perseveres with and hopes in the future that it actually works?
I don't think he has to change it wholesale. I think what he tried to do at Anfield needs some tweaks. Particularly if you're going to sit that deep, maybe start your press 10 yards higher instead of waiting to start your press, within the final third. If that could have made a big difference as well. You have your two lines, right? So if the defensive line is that deep, you don't have to have your first line come back that deep as well. They can press a little bit earlier. And I think that would be the only tweak I would necessarily see. And you see that a lot in Germany as well. Most teams don't sit back, but teams that do sit back, like Augsburg, for example, they'll still press a little bit higher up the pitch than we did. And so that's the balance that we didn't really have. But I do think, again, when you're playing against teams that are, with all due respect, better than we are, you have to give them a little bit of that respect. We can't go to places like the Etihad and Anfield and try to play open. When we do that, we got absolutely rampaged through. And we saw that under Arsene Wenger in certain times where fans would say they were kind of frustrated with going away from home all the time. And it's one thing to lose away from home against a rival. It's one thing to get absolutely banded off away from home by a rival, rather. So I think that's the balance there. And as someone already said in the chat box, it's different coming into this weekend. It's all well and good going away from home against Liverpool and trying to sit back, but Spurs at the Emirates, you can't do the same thing again. Right? So it's not just about where you play. It's also how you play, obviously. But those tweaks, hopefully he'll live and he'll learn. I do think there were positives to take away from Anfield. And if he can take those positives on board and again make little sudden adjustments, I think it'll be better the next time around. But with that said, I don't think we're going to go to Old Trafford and also sit deep. Other teams are going to be there for the taking because all of us are so far behind City and Liverpool, right? So there's a different respect level they have to give them when you go to their ground. Whereas right now, Chelsea and United are kind of in the same boat as we are. Spurs as well, So again, as Memz has said, and you've reiterated as well, it's about looking at who your opponent is and trying to not change your overall approach for the opponent. It's tweaking your overall approach because that way you do have the consistency of the same understanding week in, week out, with sudden little changes here and there, maybe in certain areas of the pitch where it's not changing the overall dynamic of what you want to do. That's how you get that cohesiveness on the pitch. So as long as we do that throughout the season, I think we'll be fine.
Now, of course, go on, Mem. Sorry.
No, I agree. And Drew made some really good points. I do believe though that Unai Emery is searching for his own style, and he's maybe looked at where other teams have been successful and looking at Liverpool's style, using the fullbacks and using the front three. And I do believe that we will try to sort of almost emulate the style of Liverpool in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we are so far and away behind them at this stage. And a couple of people in the chat box, Matthew Hudson says there that I think fans are more frustrated at the tactics than overreacting. We have seen this before. And other people in the chat box are saying that, like Michael Hernandez says there, that in my opinion, I think the fans are overreacting that we lost. Now, I think there is a difference between overreaction and being frustrated. I think there was definitely an overreaction from a certain section. It was interesting seeing the fallout from the interview with Josh Kroenke after we'd obviously won our first two fixtures. It was very well timed. Some of the stuff that he said, whilst I liked the interview a lot and I liked sort of the approach that they're going with, there was a lot of the interview that was very well said and very cleverly said, but it was, for me, the timing that was the most clever thing about it. It was the perfect time. We'd had a successful summer. We'd just come off the back of a win. I know it was recorded on the Friday before the Burnley win, but it was still a very good time to do the interview. And obviously releasing it after a win was always going to help push it. But there are certain instances where we need to see this gap between ourselves and Liverpool closed, and that's going to be done not immediately. It's not going to happen in the first game of the season against Liverpool, and it was most likely that we weren't going to get any points from that game. There was hope that we might have, but we didn't come out of that game. But I don't think we came out of that game embarrassed at all. I don't think it was the same game that what it was last year when we played there at Anfield. It was a completely different game in which we missed the opportunity to get a couple of goals earlier on, and if we had have taken that, it could have been a completely different game. Unfortunately, it wasn't, but we need to move on now to the next one. Now, obviously, in the podcast, we talk quite a lot about what we did in terms of tactics sometimes, but mainly we look ahead because we cover the game in a lot of detail in the tactical breakdown. And there's been a couple of news bits that have come out this week before I wanted to talk about the next game. And Memz, the first one has really confused me, and this is about Nacho Monreal. Now, of course, he played against Liverpool, and I actually thought he was a lot at fault for the third goal. He was pushed very hard up the field, caught out of position, and that meant that David Luiz had to come over and close Salah down in a lot more a reactionary way than he would have done had the Spaniard been more conservative in his play there. But I still think it's a bit of a mistake by Arsenal's part letting him leave at this early stage with Kieran Tierney being injured. What do you make of the links between him and Real Sociedad, and do you think it's the right move for Arsenal?
First off, I want to say Nacho Monreal has probably been our most consistent player over the last 4 years. And, when he came to the club, he got a bit of stick, but he's slowly won everyone over. He's been an absolute brilliant signing for the money that we spent for him. And, he's one of my favourite players as well. He's been versatile. He fills in at centre-back. He's been a brilliant signing for us. However, to answer your question, now an offer's come in for him. If that offer might be too good to turn down. Considering his age, considering we've just invested £25 million on a 22-year-old left back, I do believe that the club needs to get some money back. And we've sold Iwobi, and we probably want to sell other players to get them off the wage bill, the likes of Mustafi maybe. However, if these players are not going, we do need to generate some sort of income in. And considering we've got a young left back there. I know he's not fit at the moment, but I do believe we've got enough in reserves with Kolasinac that can potentially play there as well. I do believe that left back we are pretty well covered, and if an offer's come in for Nacho, considering his age, if the offers considerable amount of money, I think we'll be naive to take it, to not to take it. And I think we probably need to consider as well that maybe Nacho does want to return back to Spain at this time of his career as well. We don't know. I believe that the club is doing the right thing in selling him, considering we've got a 22-year-old left back waiting to start, and plus we've got Kolasinac there as well.
Yeah, for me, I do agree that I think it's time for him to move on. There's some interesting news that came out about the actual deal itself. I've heard some rumours that actually there's not even going to be a fee involved, and it's actually more to do with getting someone who has a decent wage off the wage bill, again, at a later stage, which financially will benefit Arsenal in the long run. But Drew, I want to get your thoughts on this. The timing of it for me is my concern. I'd much rather that we maybe let him go towards the last minute of the transfer window and him be available for the North London derby if we had him for that game. But ultimately, how do you see the deal? And do you agree with Memz that maybe it is the right time to move on?
No, I think it's the right time to move on. I mean, he's getting up there in age, obviously, and a lot of players want to go back to where they started. That's incredibly common. So I don't have an issue with it. I mean, I can agree and sympathize with the fact that, because Tierney's not fit yet, that we're only really going to have Kolasinac as the only left back option predominantly, unless we're going to put faith in somebody else in that position as his backup until then, or maybe Tierney is coming along in his fitness better than we actually think. So we don't really know, honestly, but I think it's a good time to move on. I think with this fan base, it's difficult because you don't almost want to wait until the player's massive decline to let them go, because then it almost sort of sours, that player's reputation amongst the fan base. So I mean, it's as good a time as any. He served us quite well, even up through last season. So yeah, no, I mean, I'm happy to let him go. Obviously, he's done quite well, like Mem said. He's always been putting performances, over the years through some of the best clubs in football, and he's always done quite well. So I think it makes total sense to have faith in what the new regime is doing. I mean, I think that's what it's about. I think if we're in this habit of questioning everything, because before what we had with Josh and then Raul and then Vinay and Edu, we were used to Gazidis and Arsene Wenger, and obviously some disrespect to either of them, particularly Arsene, but the transparency maybe wasn't as there as it is now. So I mean, if they're seeing this and they're putting faith in what we have until Tierney is fit and letting Monreal go, then there has to be a reason for it, and then we just have to have trust the process. So for me, I think that's what it's about.
Yeah, to be honest, of all of our signings, I know Pepe cost us 72 million, but after doing a lot of research, and obviously over the summer doing quite a few interviews with Brian McVeigh, who writes for Read Celtic, Kieran Tierney for me is the one I'm actually most excited about seeing in the Arsenal lineup and seeing how he transforms the left-hand side of our game, because what he does for Celtic has been phenomenal. And when he's fit, and that is my only real issue with the player, is his injury record. And obviously being injured now doesn't help his sort of integration into the team. But I am really excited about seeing what Kieran Tierney can do for this team and how he transformed that left-hand side. And Nacho Monreal, when Tierney is fit, probably won't be a part of this squad as much. But we'll just have to see how it goes. Kolasinac's defensive side worries me a lot. But I can't wait to see what happens in the future. Now, I wanted to cover a little bit of news before we preview the North London derby, which is, it's not specific Arsenal, but it's definitely been related to Arsenal in the past, and it's definitely to do with football, and it's important. And Memz, I'm particularly intrigued to get your thoughts on this, and it's related to social media, it's related to football, and we've seen over the last couple of weeks or so, especially this season, is a big focus around social media and the responsibility of the providers of social media taking action on certain issues that have been going around football, in particular towards racism and racism towards players missing penalties, in particular Paul Pogba and Rashford at Manchester United. And for me, it's a very bottom line. It's just, for me, the Twitter accounts need to be verified, in my opinion, and you need to have an identity towards them. Now, I'm not going to go too much into my opinion because I want to get yours out there. So what are your thoughts on this?
No, I 100% agree with you. And, unfortunately, Twitter has become a bit of a circus at the moment for faceless troll accounts that wish to hide behind a screen and put out abuse towards players and others for attention and for retweets. And that's all the reason they do it. They feel that they can do it because they are protected, and there's no one out there that can find out who they are. And I believe Twitter has to take some responsibility about this. And it's taken the likes of the the racism towards the players, which is absolutely disgusting, to actually bring this to the discussion table, which is something that probably should have been done a long time ago with Twitter. Now, what you do need to have, and I agree with you, is a process in place when you're setting up an account, some sort of verification, whether that's done with a credit card or a passport or some sort of identification, where you submit that to Twitter, they verify who you are, and then if you get suspended or you put out some ridiculous tweets, at least then Twitter can pass those details over to the necessary people. And if you do get banned, you cannot create another account because Twitter's got your ID already, and they can link that to your previous accounts. Something needs to be done in social media. It cannot carry on the way it's been carrying on with football players, with the likes of Pogba and the likes of Jesse Lingard gets it a lot. There's other players that get it a lot. It's becoming ridiculous, and now it's got out there. You're now going to have copycat people that are doing it as well because they want the attention and the retweets, and it's just going to get absolutely stupid. And something needs to be done about it. I do wish that these people out there that do things like this realise what they're doing, because it's not funny. It's not acceptable, and you shouldn't be targeting people for that type of abuse, because it's just wrong. Social media, it's a wonderful place, and I've met some wonderful people all over the world, and it engages people. There's so much positive to take from it, but there's also this dark side where people use it just to hide behind accounts and to troll. And I really believe Twitter needs to do something about it. But I believe that Twitter as well, they're probably looking at it from from a business point of view, that maybe they won't get as many users that use the platform if they do put these measures in place. So it's at the end of the day, I honestly believe that. I mean, if I was a football player, I don't know about Drew, I don't know about you, I would stay the hell away from social media. I would not be in it if I was a professional football player.
Yeah, I can see Drew nodding. The next question that leads on from that is, do you think actually they're doing enough? I mean, Karen Russell in the chat says do you think that Kick It Out, for instance, obviously a movement massively trying to push for this at the moment, have been in talks with Twitter and Manchester United to try and sort something out. Do you think actually the organisations themselves do enough at this current moment?
Is that to me? What's the truth?
That's true, mate.
The only issue is that there's only so much they can do, unless someone's caught in the act, whether if it's at a match or if it's on social media and then immediately reported. Kick It Out can only do so much, right? So, for me personally, I think the only thing that they really can do is maybe sort of be a proponent for even harsher penalties if you are caught doing anything that's prejudiced or racist or anything. And you know how I feel about this topic, so it's probably best that you don't come to me on this one. But
I think it's fair enough for you to get your opinion across, mate. Like, I mean, I know that we've had discussions in the past and talked about this in detail, and I know how it gets to you.
It's been my biggest trigger. I've dealt with racism as a student, as a coach, as a player. I've dealt with it, in the workplace. It is what it is. But I feel like it's different. Like, you have professional footballers going to on the pitch. That's their job. That's their livelihood. And if you're going to go there to their job and heckle them and make their life difficult for them just because they missed a penalty, the amount of people I've seen on Twitter, call Pog with something I won't say on this channel. Yeah. Call him a monkey or whatever. It's just because he missed a penalty. But, if it was Ruud van Nistelrooy 10 years ago and he missed a penalty, did they make some sort of, joke about Stroop waffles and clogs and, or whatever it might be? So no, I just feel like people just always need that one excuse to take it too far. And they take it too far because there's no genuine repercussions for it. And the only problem is when you have one person doing it, they're usually amongst the group that are doing it. And then normally no one from that group obviously is going to report the person that they know. And obviously it just exacerbates, right? So the most that can be done for now, really, unless stewards at a match overhear it, pull that person aside and immediately remove them from the ground and take some sort of action against them. The big one is social media, because it's not just at the match, it's after for weeks on weeks that people will do things that are grossly inappropriate. So what Kick It Out maybe can do is maybe work with Twitter and then online authorities in any way to maybe crack down on racism and prejudice in football certainly on social media, that banning your account for 4 days isn't enough. And I like the fact that Memz brought up, if you have some sort of ID attached to whatever it is, your actual national ID, your credit card, whatever it might be, your name. It doesn't really matter. That's the only way to really stamp it out, is not give people continual access to keep doing it, or else it's going to be an issue. But the unfortunate reality is that racism and prejudice are never going to go away, right? So it's just a matter of trying to do the best that we can, in an environment where it's always going to be prevalent. So,
yeah, 100%, mate.
No, well said. I mean, to be honest with you, lads, as well, just moving on from that as well. I mean, I've highlighted a few tweets and then people saying to me, just ignore it. Don't give them the attention you need. But is ignoring it and not highlighting it going to is going to solve the problem? I don't know. It's almost like you're brushing it under the carpet there. If you just don't want to see it, if you say that the answer is ignoring it, then that's not actually dealing with the situation, is it? Now, I know that Twitter has got some technology out there that finds certain words, and you've seen in match days when someone uploads a clip of a football goal going in the Premier League, that video is deleted within a couple of minutes because of copyright issues. So that there is certain words that I'm sure Twitter can pick out, keywords that that these racists use, and if you do tweet that, it can be picked up quite quickly by Twitter. So I honestly think that there's steps that they can do. It's whether or not they want to do it from a commercial and business point of view or not.
Yeah, I don't agree with people sweeping it under the carpet. I don't agree with ignoring it. As you said, you perfectly summed it up. If you ignore it, it is just brushing it under the carpet, and you are never going to solve an issue by just ignoring it. It's as simple as that, because it's never going to go away. I'm very much an advocate of saying that the ID thing has to happen for me. And people in the chat box, they're putting the argument across that there's the chance of hacking getting involved and taking people's identity and credit card, and I understand that. But I think that there just has to come a point where priorities has to go into it. And the priority for me is that there is a lot more awful and anonymity beyond measure that is used to attack people in the most horrible ways. And that has to be prioritized to be dealt with over the possible infringements of the identity side of things, because that's a bigger issue by far. And so that's where I prioritize it. And we could Go on, Mem. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I agree. But I mean, the risk of hacking it, I mean, once you submit your details to Twitter, then, who's going to get hacked? That information. Yeah, I mean, but we all use eBay, we all use Amazon, we submit our credit card details. There's information out there which we do give to social media platforms. So I don't think the risk of hacking is an issue. And of course, then there's all going to be people out there saying that, the big brother's watching us and we're giving them information. But if you want to use these social media platforms, and if you want to verify that you're an adult and you're a person, you do need to submit some sort of identification. And like you said, that risk, if that will stop that element of people that wish to do it, because it's very easy to create an anonymous Twitter account. All you need is an email address. You can get banned and the next day create another account and carry on doing what vile stuff you was doing in the past. There needs to be something in place to stop people from setting up multiple accounts or accounts designed to troll. And the only way forward, unfortunately, is by submitting some sort of ID.
100%. I think that obviously we could talk about this for a long time and bring up certain scenarios and talk about what we think needs to happen. But I think we've said a good amount on it and spoke well about it. So I'm happy to move on from there. And thank you everyone who was putting on their honest views in the chat. I was reading through them as we went, but I didn't want to put them on the screen at the time. So I think it's a sensitive subject. So that's fair enough. We'll move on then. Two more things to talk about, of course, is one looking up to the North London derby, which is always bringing us those feelings back of it's scary, but it's exciting, and you just get filled with these conflicting emotions, and ultimately you end up not being able to wait for it. But it's always important to talk about. And then I want to cover a couple of your questions that are coming on Twitter. Thank you to the people that have submitted those. But Drew, I'll come to you first, mate. Are you more confident about this North London derby than maybe you have been over the last few years? We've seen Spurs have a really tough time in the league, and I saw an amazing stat earlier about their last 15 fixtures and how many points they've taken from them, and it's not too many. I think Watford and Brighton are the only teams in the league to take less points than them from their last 15 Premier League fixtures, which is quite insane, of the Premier League teams currently still in the league. So what are your thoughts towards it? Are you excited? Are you apprehensive? Where do you stand?
It's North London derby. I'm always excited, but just because they're not in form currently this year or over the last 15, it doesn't mean that we can underestimate them. On the day, they still have quality players. Harry Kane is still quite good. Heung-min Song always hurts us. You can go through the list honestly, but it doesn't mean that we need to sit back. We can't show them that much respect at our ground. We're at Demers, we have to take the match to them, and hopefully we caught them on a bad run of form, which we have. It's just a matter of not overdoing it. Again, everything is about balance. So you want to attack Spurs, you want to put them on the back foot, you want to put them under pressure, but it doesn't mean you have to shirk our responsibilities off the ball. So you have to come with the right attitude into the match. Obviously, you have to come prepared to try and get those 3 points, get us back on track after the Liverpool result. But my only concern, I think fans want us to be so overly aggressive against Spurs because Spurs are hurting a little bit that I think they're forgetting that we still have to actually defend. So I do think we'll get 3 points. Again, I think this is a good time, not just because, for example, Tanguy Ndombele is injured, but, there seems to be quite a rift between Pochettino and maybe the board. Uncertainty over Christian Eriksen, for example. He might not even start the North London derby, and usually he does perform in those matches. So this is a good time as any to meet Spurs, and 3 points there will do us some good. So, yeah.
Awesome. Memz, where do you stand on it? Do you think it's a case where they are, obviously the game against Newcastle was very different. We can't really use that as a measuring stick because they played against a team that sat back and absorb pressure and then hit them when they were able to. Arsenal aren't going to play like that, and that could ultimately play into Spurs' hands a lot more than Newcastle were able to. Do you think that we are going to be able to open up spaces in that defence, in that back line? We've seen that Alderweireld and Davison Sanchez have had a few decent games, they made a couple of mistakes. But there are areas which they are weak. I think Walker Peters and they're not particularly replacing Kieran Trippier effectively is going to hurt them this season. The left side, obviously Danny Rose or Ben Davies. Ben Davies not 100% fit. We don't know that yet. I think there are options at the back where we can hurt them. And ultimately, do you think we'll see that front three start for the first time?
I hope so. And I think I agree with Drew. I think it's a good time to play Spurs. Unfortunately, as we all know, that form means very little in a North London derby. We could be on the back of a 20-game unbeaten run. These North London derbies, it's really hard to call because anything can happen, and an early sending off, as what we can see, can change the game dramatically. I do believe, I agree with you, Tom. I think that Spurs, the way that they played at home to Newcastle, will be totally different to how they will play this weekend. Of course, they're going to be trying to hit us on the counter attack and using Song on the counter attack as he hurt us last year, won the penalty, and we're going to get a lot of chances. And I believe Spurs are going to sit deep, try and hit us on the counter. But I do believe we're going to get a lot of chances, and it's all a case about if we can take them. Lloris is a bit suspect at the moment. Defensively they're a bit suspect. I honestly believe that. I mean, Paul Merson said it on Sky Sports News. He predicted a 4-1 Arsenal win. I believe we will batter them. I think we will absolutely batter them, and they might be famous words that might come back to haunt me, but I think that we will really, really turn them over and give them a good spanking. And yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, I hope you're right. whether that turns around happens is another thing. But no, I am more confident than I have been over the last few seasons or so. It was interesting. I can't remember whose combined lineup it was. Was it Danny Mills? I think I saw he put 2 Arsenal players in it.
Idiot.
I think he's still a bit salty after Thierry Henry nutmegged him, I think.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, he's been anti-Arsenal for a long time, as Danny Mills, and I saw that joint team, and there's a few joint teams going around, and I see Harry Winks' name mentioned in a few of them as well. I think a lot of these people that do put out these teams do it because they know they're going to get a reaction, and they know that Arsenal fans are easy prey for fishing as well. If you put a joint team out and it's 50-50 or more in favour of Arsenal, people are probably not going to ignore it. And the fact that they put the majority of Spurs fans and Spurs players on, they know that Arsenal fans are going to react and talk about it. So it's all about publicising them as well, isn't it?
100%. Right, we've got about 10 minutes left, so let's get on to some of your questions. I'm going to go to some of the questions from Twitter, but do feel free to start throwing them in that live chat. Thank you ever so much again for tuning in. If you're enjoying the content, give it a like. Please subscribe if you're new. But let's throw to our first question on Twitter, which you should be able to see on your screen now, which is from Sanyeli Masterclass, which is certainly true of this summer. And he says, Drew, do you think this should be Emery's last season, no matter what? If so, would you want to replace him?
Blimey.
I mean, for me, it's directly connected to how we fare this season. If we somehow don't manage to get top 4, And obviously, if we don't, win Europa League, then he has to go. Simple as that. But also on the flip side, we can still get top 4. But if we don't see the actual progression on the pitch, where we're still struggling in matches we shouldn't, if we're not actually playing, the proper football with the players that we do have, I think his position should also be reviewed. I think moving forward with the talent we have, it's imperative that the hierarchy get the appointment correct. Just because you have the talent on the pitch doesn't mean that anyone just sit, on the touchline and roll the ball out and let them play. There's got to be progression in the way we do things on and off the pitch as well. So I think if we meet our goals, I think he should be given his extension and then take it from there. If we don't meet our goals, I think we should opt out of the 3rd year and then try to move on and get someone who is even more progressive than he is. Maybe someone who's slightly younger, wants to play more attractive football, obviously, who will move with the times a little bit more. But again, I think it's very black and white. I think it's if he succeeds in the goals, he gets his renewal or his extension. If he doesn't, then he needs to be let go. I think it's that simple for me. So,
Memz, how do you stand on that?
And Drew makes a good case. I mean, to be honest with you, I like Unai Emery. I think he needs time. And you look at Jurgen Klopp and what he's achieving, it's taken some time. And let's remember, this is Unai's 2nd season, and we're talking about progression on and off the field. I do believe that the board significantly have backed Unai Emery this year. And Unai's got to get it right on the pitch. But I would like to say that if we reach the Champions League this season, there's been progression and he should get the extension. However, if we see us finishing 6th, 7th, etc., then obviously with the backing that the board have given him and the investment they've made, then he has to be accountable. So I think a lot of it boils down to how we do come the end of the season. But I do believe that during the course of this process, there's going to be mistakes. And I think as fans, we've got to be a little bit responsible as well about what we're putting out on social media and what we're saying. We can't be coming out knee jerk every time there's a negative result saying he has to go. Let's judge him at the end of the season. And let's see if we've got the Champions League spot or not. And then let the board make that decision.
Good stuff. Right, let's try and fire through some more of these quick fire style. Drew, from the chat, Karen Russell says, do you have more faith in Josh Kroenke rather than his father to get our club back to where we want to be?
Yep. I mean, that's the simple answer. And I've kind of been banging on this drum for a month or two just because, I've seen what Josh has done at, the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche, where it's the same blueprint. He'll come in, there's more transparency, he'll survey the club, he'll make the changes immediately that need to be changed. He often goes with younger coaches. He tries to build the team long term with younger players to build and progress with. And the results sort of speak for themselves. I think that's just it. I think Stan is and has always been the one to want to use Arsenal, the financial side of Arsenal, to make what he wanted to do with the LA Rams possible, which is okay. But as long as Josh is doing his job as well, then both can coexist. We're still going to be a financial powerhouse in world football and, in sports in general. So Stan gets what he wants, but also Josh is going to be one to sort of more passionately take the club forward and bring us back to where we need to be, like he has done, again, with other sports franchises. So I think that's kind of where it begins and ends. So, yeah, I do have faith in him. I think he gets it. I've seen him get it elsewhere. So, for me, I think it's that simple.
Cool. Mad Wide One as a question for Memz. He says, I love Alba as a goal scorer, but in my opinion, his game doesn't fit fluently with Pepe's. Laka is perfect for Pepe stylistically. Do you guys feel like Laka has to be paired with next to Pepe for him to shine?
Wow. I mean, to be honest with you, I think with the front three that we have now, with the investment we've got, with the talent we've got, I can only see all three starting. And I believe that we will probably go similar to the way Liverpool play. With probably Pepe on the right, Aubameyang on the left, and Lacazette down the middle. And of course, bearing on who we're playing, if it's away from home against Man City, etc., maybe they might rest one or and change the formation up. But I believe that with the front three that we have, they will play the majority of games together.
Drew, question that came in from Twitter, from London and worldwide, out of Vine London. He says, Emery got tactics wrong. We were lucky not to get punished in the first half. By the way, Arsenal fans get overexcited too easily, pinning their hopes on Rob Holding. The guy has had some howlers and okay-ish games for Arsenal. Do you think the optimism has any credibility?
Of course it does. I think before his injury, he was our best centre-back last season. And any center back is going to have poor performances and okayish games. Even Aymeric Laporte has had some absolute awful performances for Man City. That doesn't mean he's not a good center back. And Tom, again, that from his time at Bilbao. You can look across Europe, and even the best have a down match. The better you are, obviously, the fewer poor performances you have. But it's part and parcel of the game. You can't be putting in an 8 and 9 or a 10 out of 10 every week, unless you're the likes of Messi. Even Messi doesn't do that. So I think long term, I think you've already seen Holding progress. I think for now, by the way we've built our squad, if you look at the likes of Socrates and David Luiz, how old they are and like their contracts, I think the club's putting their faith long term in Holding Saliba growing together partnership, and maybe adding one more big name center back into that. The likes of Upamecano, not necessarily Upamecano, but that same ilk. And then I think they want to build from there and then support it with the youth system. So I do think he has what it takes to build with the club and become a very good center back. But again, it's early for him still in his career relatively. He's not really been first choice of the club for a full season. So while we can still be positive about it, I do think that we can also be reserved and say, he's not the bee's knees yet. He still has to prove himself as well. But I think there's enough there for him to absolutely do it. So.
Memz, question from Twitter. Dragomir Vardarov, big follower of the show. Thank you for tuning in again. He says, based on the Twitter outrage post-Liverpool, why are fans struggling to cope with the fact that we can't outplay every team? Sometimes we have to set up the counter to opposition. That's just how it is. Yeah,
I mean, it's just like what we said earlier on, and based on the opponents who we play against, and I believe Unai will pick his team accordingly. And what's concerned me or worried me a little bit is the build up from the back. Now, obviously, we've seen Unai trying to put his personality on the team, but this building up from the back, where the goalkeeper sort of rolls it out to the centre backs and they pass it across the back four. When you've got a team that's pressing, as Liverpool did, it almost invites trouble. And I think at times we invited trouble against Liverpool, where we was just trying to keep on passing it back. We couldn't even get our own half for a couple of minutes, because we were just constantly giving the ball back to them, and it was just relentlessly coming back. I do believe, going back to the Rob Holding situation, that is probably our best ball passing or ball playing centre back. That's probably why, with the Unai Emery style of play, he would probably be fundamental to the way that we want to progress. Going back to the question, I think us fans need to be patient. It's a process. It's going to take time, and we're going to lose games along the way. As long as we see progression, then I don't believe that there's any real need to panic as fans yet.
I think we're going to move on to the last couple of questions before we wrap things up. So going back to Twitter for Drew's final one is from Ian AFC. He says, Tom, Drew, Memz, do you think Emery is being cautious with his team selections by not putting out strongest teams such as at Anfield, given that he's under pressure now he's got backing and to at least achieve a top 4 position this season?
Good question.
It is a good question. I think a lot of the team selections are going to be dependent on who we're playing. And again, that's all right. You have a squad to use, so you should use them. But again, I also think that, yet again, it comes down to balance. You have to look at your 11 and know that, who you're putting out there, what the weaknesses are, and if there's someone on the bench that can alleviate those weaknesses while still making sure you're strong in other areas. And again, that'll come with over time. As Europa League starts, that question will answer itself. I truly believe he's going to go with more of the kids in the Europa League, especially in the group stages, so that he's going to rest up the strongest 11 possible. I think he'll use that strongest 11 in the league. I think he'll give most of the kids who we saw through preseason, who have come through the under 19, under 23s, who have done well. I think he'll give them that, and I think the squad will pick itself as long as, barring any massive injury bug. I think that's kind of where we'll begin and end. I don't think it's necessarily down to him being under pressure. I think it's down to him still trying to strike that balance between getting it right and overthinking and tinkering too much. I think once he finds that balance, I think it will be all right.
Memz, can I get your thoughts on that?
No, I think Drew's answered it perfectly. I think I 100% agree with him. I think he's going to tinker, he's going to mix it up, and he's going to use the Europa League, and he's going to use the cup games to play maybe Reece Nelson and Chambers and a couple of the other youngsters more. And then I think Drew again is 100% right. That once we do get a system, a formula that works, I think he will stick with it, and you might see a couple of changes in personnel. But I do believe that once we get the the system right, he will stick with it. And I go back to Ian's question. It's a very good question. I don't think Unai is being a bit cautious. I think he's just looking at it with the players that he's currently got available. Let's remember that we've ever got our back 2 fullbacks available. I don't think he's being cautious. He's just trying to find the right system and the right balance.
Yeah, I left the question up there because I wanted to highlight, and it was a good question. And I agree with you, Memz. It was the point I was going to highlight, saying that I don't think it is cautious, especially when you're making the brave decisions to start players like Reece Nelson and Joe Willock. I don't think that's cautious at all. I think that's slightly risky, putting your faith in such young players. I think he's shown that he's not a cautious manager in certain situations. Starting Guendouzi in his first match against Man City last season wasn't a very cautious decision. I think that he's a brave manager and he makes brave decisions. I think that it was brave to play with a very narrow team against Liverpool to absorb the pressure and then try and hit the counter, and it nearly worked. So I don't know whether it is cautious or not, but I think that there's a lot more still to come from Arsenal. Now, before we go, it's always important to get the predictions ahead of the North London derby. So this is your chance in the chat box to show us what you think the score might be going into Sunday's game. But Memz, I'll come to you first. Can I have a score prediction and a first scorer, please?
Arsenal 3, Spurs 0, and I'm going to go with Pepe scoring his first goal for Arsenal.
Awesome. Drew?
I still don't think we'll be able to keep a clean sheet just yet until everyone is completely fit. So I'll go 2-1. I do think Pepe will get his first goal as well. I think it'll be a good time for it. So yeah, I still think we'll get the 3 points.
Okay, yeah, I'm very much on board with that. I think it's going to be a game full of goals. I can't wait to watch it. I can't wait to see it. Hoping to be there. But a lot of you in the chat box are saying 4-2. Ryan Williams saying there. Ryan Arsenal's very confident, saying 1,000-1. I mean, you might struggle to put a bet on that, mate. Bulgarian Gooner says the good old 5-2. Obviously, I would love that one. Archie says 2-1 to the Arsenal and Pepe to score. I think a lot of people are wanting Pepe to get off the mark for sure. Liam Goff says 2-0 to the Arsenal. Thank you so much, everyone who's throwing in those predictions. I'm going to go for I agree with Drew. I still can't see us keeping that clean sheet, especially because we will be open and Spurs play a lot better when they're against a team that allows them more space on the pitch and the ability to attack them. So I think they will score. But I'd like to think that we will turn them over like Mem says. So I'm going to go with a confident 4-1. A 4-1 would be very nice.
That's what Paul Merson said, wasn't it?
I did, yeah. And to be fair, I don't like agreeing with half the time, but yeah, I'll go with 4-1 as a confident one. And to be fair, tomorrow's show, every week we do a show called Eyes of the Opposition, where I interview someone from the opposition's perspective. And I'm not going to lie, I've been dreading this one because it means I have to speak to a Spurs fan. But I've got one in mind, and I'm going to speak to Joe Aldridge, who I used to work with at TalkSport. He's a producer there. Big Spurs fan, always used to rub it in when he got the opportunity, but he's a really nice guy, and I can't wait to speak to him on tomorrow's Eyes of the Opposition. So please make sure you're subscribed with those notifications turned on so you'll know exactly when that drops. The last thing I have to do is thank my amazing guest this evening. I think we've had a fantastic show. Drew, of course, thank you, mate, for coming back and returning as per.
Thanks for always having me.
And Memz, it's been a real pleasure having you back, mate.
Thank you, mate. It's really had a good time with you and Drew, and thanks for having us back, mate. And yeah, keep the show going. It's a great show. Looking forward to listening tomorrow as well. I want to hear what the Spurs fan has to say.
I think plenty of people do. We won't make it such a long break between your next appearance and now, Memz, mate. We promise. We promise. And you can stop pestering me on Twitter to come on now as well, of course.
Get out of it.
I couldn't let that tweet go, mate. I couldn't let it go. Thank you for tuning in, everyone who's been on tonight. Loads of you in the group chat, in the live chat. You wish you were in our group chat. But it's been a really, really good show. Some really fantastic questions coming in. Great predictions from you guys as well. If you are enjoying the shows, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you're new around here with those notifications turned on. We will see you again tomorrow for the Eyes of the Opposition show, as I've already said. But please go and check out the tactical breakdown with myself and Graham Books that we did earlier on, which is in the description. Go check that out. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you very soon tomorrow. As always, up the Arsenal.